The first call came just after 6:30 in the morning. Graham Thorne barely glanced at the buzzing screen as he buttoned his shirt with one hand and tightened his tie with the other. He'd already missed breakfast again. His 12-year-old daughter, Leela, had padded past the open doorway of his home office half an hour earlier, dragging a duffel bag nearly as big as she was. Her silence echoed louder than any slammed door might have. The call buzzed again, unknown number. He silenced it. From across the penthouse's floor-to-ceiling windows, New York was already wide awake. Traffic hummed 25 stories below, coffee carts steamed on corners, meetings were being held, deals made. He had 3 calls lined up before 8, a video pitch by 10, and his quarterly investor briefing at noon. His assistant, Clara, would have his lunch waiting by the time he stepped off the elevator. Everything ran like clockwork except his daughter. He checked the time. Leela's bus would be pulling out of the pickup lot about now, heading 2 hours north to Camp Brightwater. He barely remembered signing the forms. Clara had handled the logistics as she did most things that fell under the column of domestic. What he did remember was the final page: emergency contact, secondary contact, parent permission. It had felt like signing a temporary release form, like handing her off. He hated how that felt. Graham didn't believe in cliches about fathers and daughters. He didn't believe in much outside of what could be negotiated, charted, projected, or secured. But he knew when things were shifting. He saw it in Leela's quiet, in the way she used her phone more to text her aunt than to answer his calls, in how she barely looked up when he came home late anymore. He told himself this was what the middle looked like. The middle of the hard part, the stretch after grief and before some better, more communicative future. At least that's what the family therapist had hinted at. The phone rang again, same number. He answered this time, impatient. Thorne. A pause, then a clear, low voice came through. Warm, female, not rushed. Hi, this is Nora Jennings from Camp Brightwater. I'm one of the senior counselors here. I wanted to speak with you about Leela. Graham's spine straightened. He stepped away from the window. Is something wrong? No, she's arrived safe and sound, the woman said. Actually, she's already made a few friends and claimed her bunk. She's fine, but I heard you tried to cancel her registration this morning. He blinked. That's right. I left a message at your admin office. Yes, Nora said, and he could hear something like dry amusement in her voice. We got it. Thing is, we usually require a little more notice than a voicemail 30 minutes before camp starts. I'm aware, he said. There were extenuating circumstances. I'm willing to pay whatever penalty. I'm not calling about the money, she said. I'm calling because I think you should reconsider. There was a beat of silence. Graham wasn't used to people telling him what he should do. Is that your job? He asked coolly. I work with the kids directly. I've been here 9 summers. And when a child like Leela shows up and looks the way she did today, like someone finally exhaled for the first time in weeks, I tend to get curious when a parent tries to reverse that. Her words hit lower than he wanted to admit. He paced to the kitchen, where a glass of water sat untouched from the night before. He needed coffee. He needed to not be having this conversation. I understand you may be concerned, Nora continued, but if it's about the accommodations or safety, I'd be happy to walk you through anything. Graham's hand tightened around the phone. It's not the safety. She was silent, waiting. He didn't fill the pause. You know, kids don't just need structure. They need connection, she said. And sometimes they find it more easily with people who aren't looking at their phones or their watch every 5 minutes. That pushed something sharp inside him. I run a company with over 200 employees, he said, his voice clipped. And I'm raising a child alone. Forgive me if I don't have the luxury of hand-whittling a canoe with her. The counselor didn't flinch, at least not that he could hear. Right, she said, that's what I figured. You think this is optional, but it's not. She's here because she needs to be, not because she needs the lake or the climbing wall, because she needs space from the version of you that thinks loving her is the same thing as scheduling her. That landed harder than it should have. A part of him wanted to hang up. Instead, he closed his eyes. Why are you calling, really? He asked. Because she looked relieved when you weren't here. That silenced him. Nora's voice softened. I think she needs 2 weeks of normal, or at least a place where she can remember who she is without all the grief orbiting every moment. She didn't say the word widower, she didn't say too late father either, but he heard it. I know you probably care more than you let on, she added gently, but sometimes letting go isn't abandonment, it's trust. He sat down slowly. The tie around his neck felt suffocating. His coffee meeting was in 20 minutes. I'm not great at this, he said. She thinks I don't try. I think she wants you to try differently. Silence hovered again. Give her the 2 weeks, Nora said. Then maybe come up early on family day, you might learn something. The call ended before he could think of a reply. Graham sat there for a long time, not working, not checking email, just sitting. Part of him imagined Leela in some rustic bunk bed, her hair pulled back, her face clearer than it had looked in months. The last time he'd seen her smile without forcing it, he couldn't even remember. He didn't call Clara, he didn't follow up with the camp office. He didn't cancel the stay again. Instead, he left for work late and thought about a woman named Nora who saw straight through him, and about a daughter who might be seeing through him, too. Leela didn't call that night. Graham told himself that was a good thing. He stood in the kitchen of the apartment, glass-walled, high-ceilinged, so quiet you could hear the hum of the refrigerator, holding his phone longer than necessary after dinner. There were no missed calls, no texts, just the faint echo of a child's voice from a memory that didn't offer much comfort now. Instead of calling, he opened the camp's welcome email again. There was a link to a parent portal, updates, photos, a message board. He hadn't looked before. He clicked. There she was. In the third photo down, half-shadowed by trees, Leela stood by a cabin entrance with 2 other girls. She was holding a clipboard and wearing that oversized sweatshirt she never let him wash. There was a streak of dirt on her cheek and something else that hit him harder than expected, the ghost of a grin. She looked different, lighter, like her shoulders were finally back where they belonged, not hunched up around her ears. She looked nothing like the girl who sat across from him at silent dinners, pushing kale around her plate. Graham shut the laptop slowly. That night he slept only 4 hours. The next morning he woke up irritated with himself. He wasn't the type to fixate, except he was. When something didn't compute, he needed to dig until it did. And Leela, whatever was happening with her at Brightwater, was starting to feel like one of those blind spots he couldn't afford. By noon, he was on his second espresso and had already tried drafting a message to the camp office twice. He deleted both. Neither sounded like what he meant. At 3:07 p.m. his phone rang. Again, unknown number. He answered on the second ring. Hi, Mr. Thorne, it's Nora Jennings again. He stood up from his desk before realizing he'd done it. I wasn't expecting a follow-up, he said. I know, I debated calling actually, she replied. Her voice had that same calm cadence, not confrontational, just unbothered by his stiffness. So why did you? Well, she said, Leela volunteered to help out with a homesick camper today. She sat with her through lunch, missed her swim hour just to keep her company. And then she walked her to arts and crafts and stayed the whole time, even though she clearly hated it. Graham blinked, thrown off by the sudden shift in topic. She did. She's not a quiet kid, Mr. Thorne. She just learned how to live around silence. That's not the same thing. The words caught him off guard, again. I'm not calling to chastise, Nora said more gently. I just thought maybe you should hear something real about her, not from a report card, not from a form, but from someone who saw her. He lowered into his chair slowly. Thank you. She's got this thing, Nora continued. She always checks to see if someone's listening before she talks, like she's trying to make sure it's worth the effort. That was exactly how she was with him, how she'd been for the last year, testing the air before speaking. I never used to notice that, he admitted. Well, you're noticing now, Nora said. That counts for something. He hesitated, then impulsively, what's she like there? Bright, Nora said without pause, and careful, but she laughs easier than I expected. She's got opinions, she's curious. And today, when she forgot she was supposed to be guarded, she belly laughed during a skit, not the polite kind, the real kind. His throat went tight. You probably don't get updates like that in your world, she said softly. No, I don't. There was a quiet understanding between them. It startled him how natural it felt. He exhaled and glanced toward the window. You've been there a while. 9 summers, 3 as a camper, 6 on staff. Why stay? She laughed quietly, because there's no cell service by the dock, and because watching kids remember they're allowed to be happy. She stopped, then added, that's addictive. He didn't respond right away. After a long moment, he said, you're good at this. I don't do much, I just pay attention. It's amazing what kids show you when you stop trying to fix them and just show up. A strange kind of silence settled between them, not heavy, not cold, just honest. Will you keep calling? He asked suddenly, unsure where it came from. I wasn't planning to, she said, voice neutral. I mean only if something comes up, he corrected. Of course. She didn't press, didn't tease, just let him have his awkwardness. After they hung up, Graham didn't open his laptop again. He canceled his evening drinks meeting and walked home instead, stopping at the bookstore 2 blocks from their apartment. Leela's favorite author had released something new. He bought it, 2 copies. He didn't know why. That night he fell asleep on the couch with the book in his lap and the camp's parent portal still open on his phone. There was a new picture. This time she was knee-deep in a lake, holding a frog in one hand mid-laugh, her hair soaked and wild. He stared at it for a long time before the screen dimmed. The rain came 5 days into Leela's camp stay. It rolled in fast, flattening the tree line with wind and gray, swallowing up the sky. By evening, the camp's daily photo feed had slowed, just a blurry shot of wet kids in ponchos under the dining hall awning, laughing at something off camera. Graham checked the parent portal twice before he reminded himself not to be that person. But he checked again before bed anyway. No new photos. No updates. He stood at the window of the apartment, New York's own storm pelting the glass. Down below, taxi lights smeared across slick pavement. Somewhere, Leela was asleep on a bunk with rain on the roof, probably warm in that old sweatshirt, probably not thinking about him at all. The next morning, his phone rang just after 9. Nora. Hey, she said simply. Something wrong? He asked quickly. No, quite the opposite. He exhaled. He wasn't even sure when he'd started associating her voice with relief, but he had. Just wanted you to know, she said. Layla, on the crew building the float for camp games. She's the only one who voluntarily stayed outside in the rain to finish the painting detail on their team flag. Graham smiled before he realized it. She said she liked the quiet after a storm, said it made things feel new. The phrase lodged in him, new after a storm. She's always had that, he murmured, that focus. Yeah, she's also got a mean side-eye when someone gets the color order wrong. Nearly melted a 10-year-old this morning. He chuckled, it surprised him, the way it echoed in the quiet of his office. Did you know, Nora continued, that she misses her mom most at night? The laughter vanished, replaced by something else. His fingers stilled on the keyboard. No, she doesn't talk about it. She doesn't have to, you can see it when she lies back on her bunk. She stares at the ceiling, not blinking, not moving. Like if she stays still enough, maybe memory will land on her. He pressed the heel of his hand against his temple. I should have seen that. You're looking now, she said. They didn't speak for a moment, then she added, grief makes us believe we've missed our chance to be the version they needed. But that's not true. The chance keeps coming. It just changes shape. He didn't know what to say to that. It was too bare. Too uncomfortably close to something he'd avoided naming for a long time. Finally he said, you always talk like this. Only to the parents who tried to cancel registration last minute, she replied dryly. He smiled again, this time it lingered. Do you have kids? He asked before he could second-guess it. No, she said, but I've been in enough messes to know what rebuilding looks like. He didn't press her, didn't ask for details. Somehow, he knew she wouldn't offer any unless she wanted to. What does rebuilding look like? He asked instead. Sometimes, she said, It looks like a man sitting alone in a tall apartment, waiting for his daughter's photo to load. He felt something shift in his chest. I didn't want to send her, he admitted. Not because I didn't trust the camp, I didn't trust myself. I thought she'd come back different, like she'd step further out of reach. And now, she asked. Now I think she might come back closer, but not in the way I expected. Nora was quiet, then she said, there's a night hike next week. We let the older kids walk to the ridge with lanterns. They get to see the lake from the overlook. It's kind of magical. Let me guess, he said, she'll probably lead the way. She already volunteered, Nora confirmed. Told one of the younger girls she wasn't scared of the dark anymore. He stared at the skyline, words failing him. Give her a chance to show you, Nora added, when you come up. I haven't said I would. But you're thinking about it. He didn't argue. Family Day is next Saturday, she said. Don't just show up for the performance. Come early. Watch what she does when she doesn't know you're looking. Her voice dropped a little. That's the version of her you need to remember. Then she was gone. Graham sat there long after the call ended, still holding the phone, still staring out at the rain-washed glass. He thought about Leela walking under trees, mud on her boots, paint on her sleeves. Thought about her not being afraid of the dark anymore. And for the first time in a very long time, he didn't feel so far away from her. Graham didn't tell anyone he was going. Not Clara, not the board chair he was supposed to meet for lunch that day, not the head of legal who'd sent him 3 calendar reminders about a contract walkthrough. He cleared his schedule himself, dragged a duffel bag from the back of his closet, packed poorly. He wasn't sure what people wore to lakes or family days or places where the only thing required was being present. But he threw in the new copy of Leela's favorite book, a hoodie he hadn't worn in years, and a camera he hadn't touched since his wife's funeral. The drive north was quiet. Past the outer edges of the city, the landscape softened, gray metal gave way to winding green, the kind that swallowed you whole if you let it. Graham hadn't driven himself in months, maybe years. He didn't miss the traffic or the noise, but the silence between turns was a different kind of loud. When he pulled into the gravel lot at Camp Brightwater, his shirt was wrinkled and his coffee had gone cold in the cup holder. He turned off the car and sat with both hands on the wheel. The place didn't look like much at first. Just trees, cabins, a small arch of a wooden sign, "Welcome to Camp Brightwater." But there was something about the quiet hum of voices down the path, the flutters of movement between cabins, the way the pine needles shimmered underfoot, that made everything feel slightly rearranged. He wasn't sure what he'd expected. Then he saw her. Leela stood by the dock, ankle deep in the lake, sleeves pushed up to her elbows, holding a net like she knew what she was doing. Her hair was messy in a way that wasn't careless, just free. She was laughing at something a counselor was saying, unguarded and easy in a way that made Graham feel both proud and painfully aware of the distance he'd traveled to witness it. She hadn't seen him yet. He stayed back just as Nora had said, watched. She moved differently here, not lighter exactly, but fuller, like something that had been clenched for too long had finally eased open. He didn't know how long he stood there before someone approached him from the trail. You made it. He turned. Nora. She wore cut-off jeans, a faded staff hoodie, and a small braid tucked into her ponytail. Her skin looked sun-warmed, her expression unreadable but calm. I didn't think you would, she added. I almost didn't. But I didn't want her to look up and not see me, he said. Nora studied him for a second, something in her face softening. You want a seat where she won't notice you, she asked. Yeah. She led him down a side path to a row of benches partially hidden by low trees. From here he could see the lake clearly. The water shimmered. Leela was still out there, now showing a younger camper how to scoop the net just right. She leads more than she follows, Nora said beside him. But she lets people feel like it's their idea. That's rare in a kid her age. She didn't get that from me, Graham said quietly. No, Nora said, but she might learn from you that some things are worth unlearning. He looked over at her, caught off guard by the phrasing. I mean it, she continued, still watching the lake. We all build things that don't serve us. Sometimes it takes loss to start tearing them down. Other times it just takes watching someone we love do it first. There was a long pause, only the sound of kids yelling across the field, birds threading through the trees. I was wrong to try to pull her out, Graham said finally. You weren't trying to pull her out, Nora replied. You were trying to pull her back. That landed somewhere deep. After a while she stood. Come on, you're early. That means you get the full tour. I didn't come for the tour. She smiled faintly. Tough, you're getting it anyway. He followed her past cabins where kids played cards and counselors swept porches. Through the mess hall where tie-dyed banners hung and shoes were left by the door. Past the arts shed, the hiking trailhead, the row of benches near the bonfire pit. She didn't narrate, just walked beside him, occasionally nodding at a camper or pausing to listen to a few bars of guitar coming from one of the cabins. It was small, imperfect, lived in. And he found himself understanding, suddenly, why this place had felt so impossible to her when she'd first told him about it, because it wasn't curated, it wasn't buffered. There was no assistant here to smooth over edges or anticipate mood shifts. It was all just real. At one point they stopped near a ridge, and he looked out over the lake. The same lake she'd see on the night hike Nora had mentioned. She said she wasn't afraid of the dark anymore, he said quietly. She's not, Nora replied. And what about you? He asked before he could stop himself. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. I used to be, she said, the kind that finds you in daylight, but this place taught me how to stay still long enough to let my eyes adjust. He turned toward her, about to ask what that meant exactly, when a shout broke across the field. Dad! Leela! She was running toward him, ponytail flying, eyes wide. Not hesitant, not cautious, just open. He dropped his bag before he even realized it and crouched, arms wide. She hit him full force. For the first time in months, maybe longer, he didn't feel like a man trying to make up for everything he missed. He just felt like her dad. She pulled back slightly, beaming. You're here. I wouldn't miss it. Her eyes were bright, flushed with sun and summer. Can I show you the flag? We worked so hard on it, and there's a skit. I have a part. I want to see all of it. She grabbed his hand. Okay, but first, this is Nora. He smiled, already looking toward the woman standing just behind his daughter. I know, he said. Leela looked between them, confused. Wait, how do you? I called him, Nora said simply, a half shrug. He needed a nudge. Leela blinked. You called him. Nora gave her a look that made Leela laugh. Don't worry, he was stubborn but not impossible. Then they were off again, Leela pulling him one direction, Nora walking beside them. And for the first time in a long while, Graham didn't feel like he was missing anything. The skit was exactly what you'd expect from a dozen middle schoolers with craft glue, too much felt, and only a vague understanding of comedic timing. Graham watched from a crooked wooden bench, elbow to elbow with other parents, as Leela marched across the makeshift stage in an outfit made entirely from cardboard and duct tape. She played a talking tree, or maybe a sentient recycling bin, he wasn't sure. What he was sure of was the way she moved, shoulders high, voice strong, arms sweeping dramatically as she delivered her lines. It didn't matter what the plot was. What mattered was how alive she looked in the middle of it. He didn't film it, he didn't even think to, he just watched. Nora stood off to the side, arms crossed loosely over her chest, smiling at some private joke as one of the younger kids tripped over their lines. The air was warm, the kind of heat that settles and softens everything, and Graham felt the strange pang of something he hadn't let himself feel in a long time. Contentment. After the applause faded, parents milled about, gathering stray water bottles and crumpled programs, but Leela stayed by the flagpole, talking with two other girls from her cabin. She was glowing in that post-performance kind of way, like she hadn't fully landed back inside her body yet. Graham waited. Eventually she wandered over to him, tugging her sweatshirt sleeves down over her hands. So, she asked. You were amazing, he said. She squinted at him as if trying to see if he really meant it. Really. He nodded. You made me forget what the skit was even about. She laughed, no one knew what it was about. They sat on the bench together, watching the lake. The sunlight had turned amber, casting long, gentle shadows on the water. "Do you like it here?" he asked, already knowing the answer. She nodded. "It's weird, but I think that's the point. You seem lighter." She glanced at him. "I feel like Mom could have liked it here." He didn't expect that. He swallowed once. "Yeah, I think she would have." Leela didn't say anything after that, but she leaned her shoulder against his just slightly, and he didn't move away. They stayed like that for a while, listening to the lake lap against the shore, to the sound of other parents laughing, to a counselor tuning a guitar for the campfire. At one point, he caught Nora watching them from a distance. She didn't wave, she didn't interrupt, just gave a nod and turned to help a younger camper carry a stack of graham cracker boxes. Later, when the fire had been lit and someone passed around s'mores, Nora sat beside him without asking. Leela was across the circle now, teaching a second grader how to roast a marshmallow without catching it on fire. Her voice was clear, steady, confident. "She's good with the little ones," Graham said. "She's good with everyone," Nora said. He watched her out of the corner of his eye, the way the flames flickered across her profile. "Are you always like this?" he asked. "Like what?" "Calm, honest, kind of inconvenient." She smirked, "Only on days that end in Y." He shook his head. "You made this happen." "No," she said simply. "You showed up, that made the difference." He didn't argue. They sat in comfortable silence, and for once he didn't feel the need to fill it. Around them, kids sang. Fire cracked. The stars began to show up, one by one, each one sharp and sure in a sky that finally felt far enough from the city to be real. Eventually Leela returned, cheeks flushed with heat and pride. She settled on the log beside them, nudging his side with hers. "Did you save me one?" she asked, eyeing the marshmallow in his hand. He handed it over. "I was holding it for you." She looked at him suspiciously, then took it anyway. Her fingers brushed his. She didn't pull back. He looked at her, really looked, and realized something simple and stunning. She was okay. She was more than okay. And he wasn't too late. They stayed like that until the fire burned low, until the songs turned quiet, until the shadows crept closer and the day was finally done. And when they walked back to the cabin path, her between him and Nora, her hand in his, he didn't think about the office or the calendar or the world he'd left behind. He thought about second chances, about small, ordinary moments, about the way love didn't always need a performance or a perfect plan. Sometimes it just needed presence. And this time he was here for it.